You're listening to continuing coverage in the Las Vegas Reporter murder trial of Robert Tellez from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Now, back to the courtroom.
Objection is submitted.
So, you know what? If I could, I'm going to remove this staple just to make it a little easier to read. No, I'll just leave it. Well, may I approach for a second? So I want to show you page 2. This first entry point's kind of obscured, but they have categories here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, this appears to be the 4th entry. There's a 4, but the staple seems to be blocking the numbers. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So, if we're looking at this here, this entry here is from, if you could tell us, what time in the morning is that coming from?
1:21 and 31 seconds a.m.
And if we look at this category here in the 3rd column, what is it denoting?
Incoming?
And if the 2nd column is telling us what type of data this is?
Yes, it's
And
email.
for this entry, what is it?
Email.
All right. So let's, whoop, did I just turn that off? Of course I broke the overhead. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Turning to page 5. If you could, just, focus this pips. Not having much luck here. Okay. Looking at this entry at the top of the page, if you could tell me, what is the date and time there?
8:47 a.m.
Is this incoming or outgoing?
It looks like an incoming text message.
Okay, and it's categorized as an instant message, is that right?
Yes.
Who is the message from? I don't know if you can read it.
The phone number.
Actually, at this point, I would object. This has been admitted through a different witness. It was admitted absent objection. He was not called upon to read the contents of these. That was covered by law enforcement. So, again, this is out of the scope of the direct. It's been addressed by the state. And it's
I don't know why we're doing a speaking objection. If you'd like to approach, we can. So, at 8:47, who sends Mr. Tellez a text message?
It's from 702-672-8556, and the name on the contacts is Olivia Tellez.
Okay, so that's at 8:47, and the request is what?
The message, what
Yeah.
it says?
Yep.
Can I go to Croquet Club today? It ends around 4.
All right, I'd like to read the next entry. How quickly is there a response? What's the time of the response, sir?
8:48 and 6 seconds a.m.
So the owner of the phone responds, is that correct? Based on this entry. It's from who? Olivia Tellez or the owner?
From the owner of the phone to Olivia Tellez.
And what's the answer?
Okay, go ahead.
So within a minute, the owner of the phone responds, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could read the next incoming instant message. Is this from Olivia again?
It's from Olivia at 8:48 and 19 seconds a.m.
Okay. And then there's a response, right? All right, thank you, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now we see there's another incoming email, is that right?
Correct.
At the top of this document, do we see another incoming email?
Correct.
I'm going to try to maybe zoom out just a little bit to make it a little bit easier. Now we see entry number 17. This is a lot easier to see over here. Entry number 17. There is another incoming instant message, correct?
Correct.
We have, and it appears to be maybe like almost like a spam message or something like that, correct?
I haven't read it, so I...
Okay.
I can take the time to read it if you like.
It's okay. Looking at entry 18, it's another incoming message. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's from Macy's. Is that right?
So again, I haven't read these, so I can sit down and read them to answer your
And
questions.
again, Your Honor, I object to his reading the messages. I mean, he was not brought in for that purpose. It was the location.
Are you gonna have a read these individually?
No, I'm trying to just move it along. I mean, isn't it true it says Macy's on there? In the,
Again, so I haven't read them, so I don't know what it says.
Sir, I
I can
understand,
take the
but
time to
the
read them
image
if
is
you
right in
like.
front. I understand that, but the image is right in front of you.
Okay, so would you like me to read it? I haven't
Sure.
read the message.
Go ahead.
Well, number 17, I don't see Macy's on there.
Sir, it's entry 18.
Oh, I think you were talking about 17.
No, it just says, it appears to be like a Macy's spam text, correct? Okay, you get
Yes.
25 to 6% off, right? Something like that. Additionally, entry number 19, there seems to be another incoming instant message, isn't that right?
Yes, they're actually just native messages, not instant messages.
Okay, and I was only basing that off of this column here saying instant message. What's the difference between native message and instant message?
Native messages are when you use your phone's native text message application. Instant messages typically are associated with iPhones, where one iPhone communicates with another iPhone, and the message goes through Apple. For Celebrite purposes, they bunch them all together under the category instant messages. But again, if you look at the source, it says native messages.
And to be clear, Mr. Tells' phone is a Google Pixel phone, isn't that
Correct.
right? All right. Moving on to page 7. There seems to be a text message incoming from a number. Can you please read out what that number is?
Okay, can you pull it down just a little bit?
I apologize, yeah.
Okay, it's another message incoming.
Okay. It indicates that it's a pending assignment, is that correct?
It says caseworker pending assignments. Again, I haven't read the message.
Moving here, there's another, the next one is what, an email that comes in?
An email, correct.
We have another incoming message from 855-712-0964, is that correct?
Correct.
We have another incoming text message from 702-858-1693, is that right?
Correct.
There then is a second message from the exact same number, isn't that right?
I'm sorry, I'm seeing
Entry
one.
number 24 appears to be a second native message from 702-858-1693. Is that correct?
Well, they're dated the same time, so I believe it's the same message we're looking at.
Okay.
There's two images.
I'll put it this way, there's 2 entry points on this report, is that right?
Correct.
All right. And then there appears to be a call, is that correct? An incoming call.
Correct. There's an incoming call.
And what is the significance of the 00000?
There was no duration on the call, so someone that called and
Not picked up.
not picked up.
Moving to page 9. Now we're at about 10:49 a.m. Apparently we have an incoming email, is that correct?
Correct.
We have another incoming call, correct, at 11:16.
Yes.
Again, it has the 000, so that means that call wasn't answered, isn't that right?
Not answer correct.
We have another incoming email from Samsung, is that right?
Yes.
That's at 11:30 in the morning?
11:28.
11:28, I'm sorry. Moving on to page 9. Appears to be some type of calendar entry. Moving to entry number 30, there's another incoming email, is that correct?
Correct.
That appears to be coming from Peacock or NBC, would that be fair?
Yes.
Peacock TV, right? Isn't that their subscriber? They're like the streaming service. There's a calendar appointment that pops up here, is that right?
Correct.
We have a user account, something regarding Clark County SharePoint, is that right?
Correct.
We have another incoming call coming in at 1:20:29, isn't that right?
Yes.
Is that phone call answered?
Not on the Celebrate report now.
Okay. By 1:20, there's another call log at 1:21, is that right?
I can't see that far down.
Understood. Sorry.
Yes, there's the call at 1:21.
Okay. And there's an instant message that's incoming as well, is that right?
Correct.
And it's at 1:21:50, is that right?
Correct.
Turning page 11. We have another incoming text message, is that right?
Correct.
As of 1:21:53, we have another incoming text message, is that right?
Correct.
At 1:22:37, we have another incoming text message.
Correct.
At 1:26, we have another incoming text message, is that right?
Correct.
And then at 2:05, we have an outgoing text message, correct?
I can't see the bottom of the
Sorry
page.
about that. We have an outgoing text message at that point, right?
At 2:05, yes.
Okay, and just to be clear, that first text message comes in from that number, 702-325-2821 at 1:26, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And we don't get a response until 2:05 p.m., isn't that right?
Yes.
Responding
Correct.
to that same number, isn't that right?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions to this witness.
I can have that.
Sure.
Mr. Aguirre, there have been a number of questions concerning the events of September 2nd, where the state had asked you that people kept trying to reach out to Mr. Tellis and that there was no response, correct?
Correct.
Remember the testimony that you had given that these could have been automated? That
Correct.
could be data texts, things of that nature.
Correct.
That's pretty much confirmed what you had said, has it not?
Yes, a lot of those seem to be junk.
They're junk.
Yes.
Automated junk, fair to say?
Yes.
So again, that he's trying to be reached out and he's not responding because he's supposedly, or the inference is he's doing something nefarious. How often do you respond to junk messages?
I don't. I just put them in the junk folder and delete.
So it's fair to say on the morning and early afternoon of September 2nd, he was receiving a lot of junk messages
It appears that way, yes.
and he wasn't responding to them, correct?
Correct.
So that's consistent with what your testimony has been.
Yes.
If I could have this brought up, it's currently on the laptop. It's the PowerPoint.
Do you want the PowerPoint or the
The PowerPoint, please. And this will go back to the jury. Again, this just confirms there was a bunch of junk messages they were receiving on that morning.
Correct.
Say. You were asked to review the phone contents and the activity to determine a pattern of behavior. Fair to say?
A pattern of locations where the phone is located at various times.
Correct. And the testimony and the data that you've been provided has been consistent with that request.
Correct.
There are a number of questions concerning the gym based upon your review of August at least. There was activity, the location activity, which is what you're testifying today concerning.
Yes.
It's consistent. There were visits to that gym.
Yes, the gym is definitely a location where the phone could have been.
And on September 2nd, 2022, about noon, there was the data that you reviewed was consistent with that phone being in the area.
Correct.
In reference to the media locations, again, we were asked concerning the media locations, the significance of that. There was these inferences that somehow he was turning off his phone to avoid detection. It appears that for the year of 2022, these media locations concerning your analysis of the phone were fairly consistent. I mean, we
Yes.
have a big month in January.
Yes, the media locations are consistent, and as far as the phone being on or off, we have a lot of different records that show activity on the phone through the pen register, the various T-Mobile mediation data sessions. timing events. So when you have activity recorded with tower information, the phone is typically on. So you can have a gap in calls made. It doesn't mean the phone is turned off. That's a big assumption to make.
Okay, in fact, on the lower location, the middle location, we actually have a media location, data location on one in September, correct?
Correct.
The month that this crime is alleged to have occurred, fair to say?
Correct.
Whereas the other months, we don't have anything.
Correct.
And if we were to follow this line of reasoning that this was turned off to hide some activity, that would kind of contradict that idea, wouldn't it?
Yes. With that theory, it was off on the previous months when nothing was going on.
And again, concerning the contents of these messages that we have received, there is nothing that you have reviewed or you're aware of that the actions on this phone, this receipt of these automated messages, was in any way inconsistent with other months. You weren't asked to review that, were you?
No, it was not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
One brief question based off that last. Okay. So you remember how he asked you about, let's talk about that theory if the phone is turned off, would these text messages be inconsistent with that? And you had indicated yes, correct?
That is consistent with it being
It'd
off?
be inconsistent.
Inconsistent, correct.
Right. But it would be consistent if you just left your phone at home, right?
Yeah, again, all I testify is where the phone is. I'm not testifying as to who had the phone.
Right. Because if you left your phone on in your house, you could go wherever you needed to go, and no one would be able to track your movements through your phone, correct?
Correct.
And additionally, people could still be trying to reach out to you, right?
In theory, you could, yes.
Right, so picture, messages from your daughter could still show up on your phone. Messages from your wife could still show up, or calls from your wife could still show up on the phone, right?
Correct.
But if you're not at home, you're not able to answer any of those messages, correct?
That would be correct.
And just to be clear, when we look at his phone from 8:48 to 2:05, there's nothing outgoing from Mr. Tellis' phone on the day that Mr. Garriman is murdered. Isn't that correct?
That is correct,
No
yes.
further questions.
Just in response, but the majority of those messages were automated.
Correct.
No further questions. Thank you.
Received a question from a juror. It's been marked as Court's Exhibit Number 18. Is there any methods of taking photos with the cell phone that would not show up on a media location map?
Sir, can you repeat that one more time?
Is there any methods of taking photos with a cell phone that would not show up on a media location map?
Yes. Yeah, there definitely is ways. If you turn the location services off on your cell phone, then you can take photographs and no location will be recorded. So the media locations are only active when your location services are turned on.
Any follow-up from the defense? The state?
Yeah, just very briefly. And you're familiar of the term the cloud, right?
Correct.
And you're also familiar with caches, correct?
Correct.
And so you could, for example, take a photograph. I don't know, I'm standing here, but you could take a picture using your camera. Maybe you could delete it, but it could go up into the cloud and it still may be captured, correct?
You can take a photograph and go up to the cloud, store it there, and you can delete it from your phone and still be stored on the cloud.
And it may not, when it's up in the cloud, it may not have, for example, location data. Would that be accurate?
It depends on which cloud service you're using. Some will strip location out of it, some leave it on there.
And sometimes if images get stored in a cache pathway, that also may not have the location information. Would that be fair?
Well, images in a cache file are temporary images. Those will never have location on them.
Okay. So it can be like you took a picture, maybe you could delete that picture, but it was cached, so it's stored away. over there. So you're not going to have location information, but at some point that image was in that phone. Would that be fair?
I want to make sure we're talking the same language. When a phone takes an image, takes a photograph, you create one original image, and then you're going to find multiple smaller versions on either a cache file or in other directories of the phone, because the phone will utilize different size images. So only one is an original with latitude, longitude. The others are copies that typically don't have any metadata with regards to location.
Right. So if you found an image in a Celebrite report, and it says the pathway comes from a cache, you would agree that that's not the original image. That's just a stored away, maybe smaller image that was produced by that phone at some point. Would that be correct?
Yeah, a cache file can be a smaller image of the phone, or it could be if you go on a website, it stores images from a website. So those are all going to cache files.
Good example, like Google Maps, right? If you go to Google Maps, it might cache the images that you're looking at, maybe when you're in Street View. Would that be fair?
When you go on any online service,
that includes
it would
Google
create cache images. And again, those would not have any location information, would not have date that it was taken. They're just images. Again, if they're from a website, and they're just stored in the temporary cache files.
And a lot of times with those cached images, they may have in Celebrite an indication that they're modified versus maybe an original image, it might say created. Would that be correct?
No,
Okay.
that created, modified, and accessed have nothing to do with when they were taken.
Okay.
Those dates are only when they're written to the internal memory or when they're looked at in the internal memory. The date that a photograph is taken is stored in the metadata as a date captured.
Okay, so the key is look to see that pathway. If it's cached, you're probably not going to have location services. Is that correct?
On a cache file, you will not.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, Jim. Turning your attention to what's on the screen concerning this media locations app. Again, the questions concerning whether it was on or off. We're making assumptions. Are you able to give any opinion as to whether that was on or off, or there just wasn't use of the media locations aspect of this phone?
No, all we can tell from this is that in January, September, and March, there were images that had locations. Again, the other months, there's none to speculate that it was location services turned off or something else. It's speculation.
It's nothing more, speculation, and there's no indication of any intent based upon the review of the user or the owner based upon your review of this information before you.
No, not based on just this records alone.
Thank you. No further questions.
Anything else for this witness? Mr. Hamner, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony here
Thank you.
today. You may step down. You are excused from your subpoena. At this time, we're going to recess for lunch. During this recess, you are admonished not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication, or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do any research, consult dictionaries, the internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form or express any opinion regarding the case until it's finally submitted to you. And we'll start again at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. All rise for the here. Jurors. Like last case first. Thank you. Everyone, please be seated. Under order now back in session.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of our panel?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may call your next witness.
Defense calls Nicole Lofton.
Nicole Lofton.
If you'll please watch your step, step up into the witness stand. Remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, please.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Yes, my name is Nicole Lofton, Nichole. Lofton is Lofton.
Thank you. Ms. Lofton, do you know Robert Tellis?
I do.
You see him seated here in council table?
I do.
Is he the gentleman with the fine hair or the bald gentleman?
The bald gentleman.
How long have you known him?
Since 2021.
2021. Did you work at the public administrator's office?
I did.
When did you begin work there?
May of 21.
He hired you.
He did.
When you began your employee at the public administrator's office, how many employees were there?
I think our group may have been 9.
And what was the environment like when you began?
Well, I'll just start with Rob, and it was very inviting. He was gave me a day one tour of the office, kind of a lay of what we'd be doing, and a little bit about how the office was ran. Introduced me to the staff, which included the lead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay. That included the lead, which was the, I forget what the title was, but she was basically the primary not investigator, but the primary, I'm so sorry. She was the person kind of over our group. And then there was the assistant public administrator and investigators, kind of a woman that ran the shop, so to speak. And then there was another couple of people across the street that warehouse people. So over the first couple of days, that's kind of how he introduced me to the department.
And what was the general location of the public administrator's office?
It's across the street from Valley and UMC Hospital. I forget the address, I'm sorry.
Okay, then you're not being asked to recall that. What was your position at the public administrator's office?
Probate administrator.
And what did your duties include to be the probate administrator?
So I was responsible for what I would call my book of work assigned by Rob, and it involved receiving cases of decedents, people who passed away in the county, and basically handling their estates. Most of our decedents' families were either not reached immediately or didn't have the capacity to handle a probate themselves.
Okay.
So we had small estate probates that would kind of entail a nominal bank account, a couple of $1,000s, and no real property. And then we had some of the larger cases that involved real property and businesses and other assets that needed to be dissolved.
Did you work at the office full-time?
I did.
Did there come a point in time where there was news of articles, talk of articles coming out that were authored by Jeff Garman?
Probably about a year into my tenure there.
Okay. Would that have been about May 2022?
Approximately.
After the first of these series, and are you aware that there were 4 articles?
I am.
After these articles began to be published or to be known in the office, did you observe any expression of anger from Mr. Tellis?
No.
Was it fair to say that it was business as usual from the time that you started up until and through that time?
As far as business is concerned, absolutely.
Okay, and then you're
we
getting to
were
my
re-
next question. Did there appear to be a divide upon your, in the office once you started working there?
Yes.
And what was this
immediately.
divide? You said immediately. Please continue.
Correct. So, I don't know at what point I brought it to Rob's attention, but I definitely felt a lot of tension in the office and kind of on my own, other than the training that I was receiving from Rob, some coaching or just kind words from one of the other administrators. But the majority of the staff was upset that it seemed as if they were upset that I was there. And I had to go back as in discussions with my husband and recall, like, we were coming out of COVID, and I started thinking, I was like, did I interview, not in person? I knew that part of it. But I said, wasn't I on camera on Zoom? And because I remember there was some technical difficulties. So I don't remember whether or not the cameras were completely working. I do remember having seen the majority of the people on the panel, but I don't really know that they saw me. And so I kind of immediately within the first month felt like now I'm here and they see me, a little bit taken back by whom he had hired.
Okay, when you say whom, you're talking about Robert Tellis.
Yes.
Did there ever come a point in time where you were told basically you had to choose sides?
Yes, pretty early on. One of the administrators, Alicia.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained. I mean,
Her identity? I mean,
you're just going to ask her who it was?
yes.
Okay, you can ask her.
Was it Alicia Goodwin?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And not, without getting into what she said, but basically this idea you felt like you had to take sides.
Yes.
And the sides would either be on the side of Alicia Goodwin and others or Robert Tellis.
Correct.
Did that cause stress to you?
It did.
How did it impact you?
I just felt uncomfortable choosing between, I had been a supervisor before, so I felt uncomfortable choosing the staff members over my supervisor. Didn't have enough information to make a decision on one side or the other. I just wanted to do the work.
Understood.
And it just became increasingly harder to do the work because I refused to choose.
And did it appear that your desire to do the work matched that of Robert Tellis's desires?
Yes.
Just to do the work.
Correct.
Now, in order to avoid hearsay or to draw objections, in reference to this pick sides, we had Mr. Tellis on one side, we had Miss Goodwin on the other. Who else was on this other side?
Rita Reed, Noreen, and I apologize, I don't want to butcher her last name. Jessica, at some point, joined that side. She wasn't there initially. Initially, she was kind of helpful when I would have property come into the warehouse. One person who was day one was, I think her name was Janie, sorry. And she was the office admin, but she was day one nasty.
And was it after your understanding that there was a desire that you should pick sides, did these articles then that were authored by Jeff Gehrman follow this?
Months later.
Months later. And you had testified that after these articles came out, you didn't see Mr. Tellis angry.
I did not.
You didn't see him throwing things, slamming things as a result of these articles, or anything else for that matter.
I did not.
Did he ever act hostile towards yourself or any other people?
No.
As part of your duties, did you ever go with Mr. Tellis to estates that were being overseen by the Public Administrator's Office?
I did.
And if you could please describe for us what this entailed. What did you do with him?
So most of the time, it would involve real property. And so we would meet with the brokers assigned to that had been charged with selling the property, or and or someone who was going to do a soft or even harder than a soft renovation. So we would meet at the property most of the time because I didn't have access to a county car. We would ride together, and then we would get out and we'd kind of walk through the property. We've already seen photos and such, so it wasn't long visits. It was just pretty quick. Mr. Tellez, or Rob, as I called him, was pretty familiar with what he wanted, what would generally be accepted by families as far as the level of work that would be done. And sometimes they wouldn't be in a condition where you could stay in there very long. Some of the real property had decedents, unfortunately, who passed away in the homes. So it wasn't something that you would feel comfortable staying long periods of time in.
So what you're saying is some of these properties were in a fair amount of disrepair. They weren't kept.
Either that is correct, or just the smell. Sometimes you would have the smell from, decaying human waste.
Human waste.
Yeah.
So that, if I understand your testimony, these homes or these structures would be unoccupied with homeless people coming into them, things like that?
No, not so much that they had been squatted on. Just someone, it's a pretty common phenomenon for someone elderly to pass away in a recliner.
Now I understand.
So we come in, even though the person is gone, that recliner with human waste on it is still there. The smell from it or the stench from it is still in the home on these initial visits.
Now these homes, generally the person that would pass, they didn't have a will, they died, I think the legal term is intestate?
Correct.
And there was a desire by yourself to prepare these homes and to move them so the heirs could receive monies from the passing of a loved one.
That was the absolute intent.
And did you share this absolute intent with Robert Tellez?
I did. I learned it from him.
About how many of these home sites did you walk with Rob Tellez?
I would say at the time that I left, I had had done maybe 30 to 40 cases, and I would say about half of those had real property attached to them.
Okay, so a substantial number.
Correct.
Over at least about a 1 year period or more?
Year and a half.
Were you familiar with his gait? The way he walked?
Pretty much.
If I could turn your attention to what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 338. May I publish this?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't break it.
Your Honor, may I have the order? I can have some.
Not. It's not doing it. Not sure why.
I wanted to show you just a video clip, and we're trying to get it up on the overhead screen.
Guys, just, so pull that up and then hold it and slide it to the right. It's pretending as if the monitor to your right is connected to your computer.
Hey, give me 1 second.
It is actually.
So then, how?
So kind of on the.
You're welcome to.
top of it.
Yeah, I've never.
Oh no, I grab a. So let's do it this way. Magic. You're welcome. Hold on. I just here. If you can.
There you go. Thank you very much. So you want to use that screen, Bob?
No. So you'll have to use the mouse pad over there and move your cursor. You'll have to watch that screen. It's like they're connected.
Here we go. All right. You've seen this clip, I'm assuming?
I have.
Okay. I'm going to play this for you. You testified that you're familiar with Rob Tellis's gait, the way he walks.
Yes,
Are you able to say that that's him?
I am not.
You don't look at that gait and go, that's Robert Tellis.
I haven't. I've looked at it before and I did not come to that conclusion.
Like I said, we're not going to get the substance of conversations, but did you know a gentleman by the name of Zach Schilling?
I did.
Who was he and what did he do?
He was a real estate agent. I'm not sure if he's an actual broker, but a real estate agent on a few of my cases.
Okay. Was there, fair to say, a falling out between him and Mr. Tellis?
I would say between him and myself, which I brought to Mr. Tellis's attention. I wasn't aware that it went further than, or if he had anything separate from me, but for sure, I brought some concerns to Mr. Tellis's attention.
And was that concerning the way in which he treated the property?
Personal property, yes.
Not, did you?
And some of the conversations he called me about and had.
Okay. And as a result of, let me ask you this, do you feel like he misused property or misappropriated property?
I feel like something went missing and he never gave an explanation for it.
And then you brought that to Mr. Tellis's attention?
I did.
And is it fair to say then that Mr. Schilling basically didn't have any more listings or he wasn't involved anymore concerning the moving of these estates to get the monies to the heirs?
I would say with, as far as the, at some point, the office kind of broke off from supervision, so I wasn't privy to what the other person's caseloads were, so I don't know if they were continuing to use him, but I know that people, I want to say, on our side, were not using him any longer.
And when you say your side...
And I hadn't seen him in the office, which is not common. If you're working on cases, you see the brokers quite often.
So after this issue that you had with him concerning the disposal of decedent's property, and after bringing this to the attention of Mr. Tellis, your side of the office wasn't using him anymore?
Correct.
And your side of the office, meaning you, Mr. Tellis, and others, fair to say?
Fair.
And those on the other side of the office, who would those people to be? Are they the same ones that you had stated?
Yes.
They were using him?
I don't know. I
don't
wasn't
know.
privy to their cases.
Following these articles that were authored by Mr. Gehrman, did you ever witness any retaliation on the part of Mr. Tellis to anyone in the office?
No.
And is that from, and that would have been, the time of these articles was May of 2022 until Mr. Tellis no longer being there. Was it consistent, no retaliation?
Yeah, and in fact, it was quite the opposite. I was asking for things, and I'm sorry, I'm a tear up.
Understood.
I was asking for things, and because of these articles and the treatment or what he expected to get as a result of these articles, how he was expected to be treated, he kept asking me to just wait. And having been new to the county, I wasn't familiar with the process. I was asking people, and I wasn't getting a lot of answers as to how to handle the bullying. So it was quite the opposite. It wasn't that he was doing something to them, it was that it was being done to me, and he was saying, just wait. We're going to get to a point where we can address these issues, and we never got to that point.
Who was bullying you?
Objection, relevance?
Effect on the listener. All right. Mr. Tellis ultimately lost in the primaries.
Yes.
That would have been in June of 2022.
Correct.
Following his losing in the primaries, did you see him act out in anger?
No.
Did you see him become hostile with anybody in the office?
No. I saw him less frequently, but on a schedule. We would put together our work and we would communicate with him, and I knew what days he would be in signing things. And again, it continued in that pattern where I had to wait for signatures. I would get denied signatures. Things that needed a certain dollar amount needed dual signatures. Things would go missing.
And whose signatures were being denied from you?
Read.
So after Robert Tellis loses the primary, was it your observations that it was business as usual? You were just trying to process these estates to help those who had suffered the loss of a loved one?
Everything was the same. He was the same demeanor in handling things. I feel like he might have even went an extra step to involve people in the investigative part of our job where we had to send people out. Again, that was a little bit of my frustration because I felt like, hey, you're the public administrator, just make a decision. But he continued to try to involve Rita in things, even though the minute he stepped out of the office, the help that I was due stopped.
And that then was to the detriment of the heirs?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So I want to make sure I got my math right. My understanding is that you knew Mr. Tellis for about a year and a half before he was arrested?
Yes.
Okay. And during that time period, was all of your contact with him in the workplace?
With the exception of maybe like one or two, maybe one thing outside of the office, and it was just a Easter egg roll that I brought my children to.
And so when you were in the workplace, was it a situation where you worked with him every day or some days more than others? Can you give me some sense?
Every day.
Okay.
We had cases to review. I had questions. I was still actively in training.
Okay.
And actively having to ask questions. And he had checklists for every phase of our work.
Sure.
And so when I got to finish one set of checklists, I would have to have that part of my cases reviewed. So every single day.
And you were a probate administrator?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever work with Roberta Lee Kennett?
I did.
Okay. Did you guys have the same job, or did you
Yes, we did.
kind of a
I
complementary?
started off as a 1, and then I moved up to a 2 after probation.
Okay. And we've heard some description from her that you maybe would be responsible for one house, and then maybe she, because she had the same job, would be responsible for a different house?
Well, it wasn't by house, it was just by the
estate.
decedents.
Okay,
yes.
yeah, that's a better way to put it. But how many of probate administrators were there?
If you count the lead, 4.
4? Okay, and so
And then 5, we added someone later.
So I assume then Mr. Tellis would be working with, as the public administrator, sometimes he would be working with any one of the 4 or 5 of you on the various projects that associated with those estates?
Correct.
Okay, and when he was working on one project, I assume then you were doing other stuff on your own,
Yes,
on your
there's
own project?
lots of tasks to do outside of.
Okay. Now, you said that you started in 2021, is that right?
I believe so.
Do you remember what month that was?
May.
May? Okay, so it's about a year in when those stories start coming out about Mr. Tellis?
That sounds accurate.
Okay. And did you, I think you said on direct examination, you recalled that there was a series of them, like 4?
Yes.
And you said that you didn't observe Mr. Tellis to be upset about the stories?
No, in fact, the first story he asked me to participate in,
Okay.
and I met with
Yeah.
Mr. Garman.
Yeah, Mr. Gehrman actually came to the office before that first story, and Mr. Tellis sat for an interview, right?
Correct. We all did.
Yeah. And then it was after that that the first story came out?
Yes.
Okay. And then that very first story alleged an inappropriate relationship. It alleged bullying and kind of mismanagement in the office. Do you recall that?
I just recall the things that were related to me. I'm not sure if Article 1, 2, 3, or 4 alleged
Okay.
any relationship things. I just remember the part relating to me.
I mean, do you remember like that generally the allegations were kind of unflattering to Mr. Tellis?
The first article, no. I think I don't recall it being unflattering to him.
Do you remember if one of the articles had sort of a video attached to it in an electronic version?
I remember I don't remember if it was attached to which article, but
Okay.
yes,
Oh,
I do
okay.
remember that video. Thank
Okay,
you.
and it's your testimony that he never expressed any anger or upset or disappointment about that article?
With me, no.
And I guess, yeah, that kind of gets to my question. That's kind of your relationship with him, right? He didn't express that to you. You wouldn't be aware of what he might have expressed to the reporter directly, for instance, right?
No.
And you wouldn't be aware of what he maybe put on social media about that reporter, correct?
No.
So like if he was posting negative things about that reporter after he wrote the stories on Twitter, maybe you didn't observe that.
No, I wasn't following him on social media.
Okay. So it could be that he was posting things that demonstrated upset with the articles, and it's just you're not on Twitter, so maybe you wouldn't have seen it.
I'm on Twitter, just not following Mr. Tellis.
Okay, fair enough. Now, it sounds like there was a pretty stressful environment in the public administrator's office around that time period. Is that fair with these
Prior to the articles.
Okay, prior to and then including the time of the articles, right?
Yes.
And then there was a point in time when the county made the decision to actually bring in a different manager to kind of help with managing the public administrator's office, right?
That wasn't the way that Jeff Wells related to us.
At some point, Mike Murphy comes into the office, right?
Yes.
And that was in part based on the factionalization in the office?
The way it was presented to us was that he was going to help us kind of organize the office and kind of get back to work.
As opposed to doing what? Like when you say get back to work?
As opposed to focusing on those of us that were being bullied, those of us that were crying at the copier because someone was saying things to us.
So he's kind of brought in Mike Murphy to kind of calm things down, get rid of the drama, and get back to work.
Yes.
Okay. And that was done while Mr. Tellis was actually in charge of the public administrator's office, right?
Yeah, so very early on, that was it, and then they didn't like that, and then they split the office up even further.
Now, are you familiar with all the vehicles that Mr. Tellis owned?
The vehicle he owned was a brown BMW.
Did you ever know him to drive a maroon Yukon?
That's the only vehicle I'm familiar with, is the brown BMW.
Is the BMW, so you never saw the Tesla either?
No.
Okay. And so the BMW would be the one he primarily, it sounds like, drove to work?
Correct.
Okay. When you, Mr. Droskovich showed you this video that was a Metro release, and you said that you're pretty much familiar with it, and then you don't recognize this gate as being unique to Mr. Tellis. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. I assume you don't have any personal knowledge as to who is actually in this video.
I do not.
Okay. And you don't know any of the, from personal knowledge, you don't have any personal knowledge of who was walking down Mr. Gehrman's street on September the 2nd, correct?
I do not.
Okay. And you haven't seen all the video evidence associated with this case or the vehicles. Okay. Mr. Draskovich asked you about Mr. Tellis's dealings with Zach Skilling. Do you recall that on direct?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that there was a point in time when there was a conflict with him, and then he wasn't used thereafter. Is that right?
That's correct.
When was that conflict?
The dates?
Well, I mean, can you just give me a rough time? Like, was it,
About halfway into my tenure. I only had maybe 1 or 2 cases with him.
Okay.
And the reason why I specifically remember this one is because of the decedent was a Jet Beauty. It's a African American magazine. I grew up watching that, looking at that magazine. And so I was kind of in awe when I went to walk her home prior to putting it on the market and seeing all of the African American artifacts and various memorabilia.
So was this, when you say it's about halfway through your tenure or your time there?
So maybe fall.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think, like fall, November,
Fall,
December of
somewhere around there.
21.
That's a guess.
Okay. Now, it's your testimony that there were no other dealings with Mr. Tellis and Mr. Skilling after that?
I don't think that was my testimony.
Oh, okay. So explain that to me.
I said that I did not believe that our side of the office was using him after I had this concern about the missing personal property.
Okay. Could there have been other, could he have been used on other cases and you just maybe weren't aware of them because they weren't the ones that you were personally, it doesn't sound like it, it sounds like you had a unique caseload that was just yours.
Right.
So he could have done a whole bunch of other houses or other decedents, as you say, but you didn't work with him after that.
I think the one thing that needs to be kind of clarified is that he did have a partner.
I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Okay.
You just have to answer the question.
Ask it again, please. I'm sorry.
So it sounds like you had your own caseload, correct?
I did.
Okay. It could be that he was working with other estate coordinators and you might not have been aware of it. Is that?
Highly unlikely.
Okay, so you believe he didn't do any, didn't work on any projects into 2022?
What I believe is that he was not getting new books of work.
Okay. When Mr. Tellis left the primary, you said that he started limiting his time in the office?
That's correct.
And it was Rita Reed who won the primary, correct?
Yes.
And then once she won the primary, did she institute any changes in the office while, Mr. Tellis was sort of a lame duck public administrator?
No.
It was all still his...
Because she won the primary, she hadn't won the election.
Right. So she kind of followed his rules until, I guess, she became the public administrator?
I wouldn't say so, because I don't think he had a rule that it was okay to continue bullying staff members, so I don't think she...
Well, I guess what my question is...
talking about with respect to the work, was she still following his rules?
Yeah, sure.
She was still running the investigative team.
Okay.
The investigators.
And then sometime after that, she actually becomes the public administrator, right?
I was gone by the time she became the...
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Just briefly, in reference to Mr. Murphy, Mr. Murphy came in while Mr. Tellis was still in charge.
Correct.
Did Mr. Tellis welcome him?
He did. He, in fact, offered that as one of the solutions to some of the problems I was having with Alicia and Rita and Janie, and saying that they were here and that they were going to make sure that things got back to the business at hand.
So the office would then run efficiently?
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You are excused from your subpoena. Thank you for being here. Mr. Draskovich, do we...
Yes, Terrence Jameson.
please step up and use the stand. No, that's fine. Just remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, please.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My first name is Terrence, Terrrence. Last name, Jameson, Jamison.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. How are you employed?
How am I employed?
Yes.
I'm employed by Planet Fitness as a general manager.
Okay, are you over a particular store?
Yes, the club that I run is off West Charleston Boulevard.
Okay. Is it the one that's off of basically West Charleston and is it Fort Apache?
Yes, sir, that's across the road.
Next to a Whole Foods? Did you receive a subpoena?
Oh, yes.
Did you receive a subpoena in reference to documents or records that may be at your store?
That is correct.
I may approach the witness. I'm showing you what's been marked. Is it T2? T2. If you could please review this document.
All done.
Okay, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is this document?
This document is a report from DataTrack, our operating service for Planet Fitness, and this is the remote check-ins from September 1st, 2022 to September 3rd, 2022.
Okay, when you say remote check-in, please explain to us what this is, what that means.
So a remote check-in is anybody that is not based out of the specific location out of West Charleston signing in to the club. And so the reason why it's a remote check-in is because it is not the club that they originally signed up at.
Okay. What is the, and I'm going to direct your attention to more specifics within this document, but just trying to make a clear record concerning what this document is. This is a remote check-in, and this basically is when people go in, I'm assuming they have a fob or some other, maybe a gym card. They go in to sign to go in to work out at the gym. Fair to say?
That is correct.
And this document captures their signing in.
Yes, this document gets the time of what they checked in, their first and last name, their barcode, and membership type, along with if they're allowed to enter.
Okay. When a person, and you would agree with me that this is a business document?
Yes.
And this is a business document that's kept in the ordinary course of business?
That is correct.
Following the rules and procedures that govern the keeping of these documents for Planet Fitness?
That is also correct.
Now, you had said it was a remote check-in. Now, if a person, let's say, goes and signs in for a membership, let's say in the Decatur location or something with that, that would be the primary place where they filled out the paperwork. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But when you say a remote check-in, let's say a person buys a membership at Planet Fitness, let's say years before, but then lives near the Charleston site where you work. When they go in, they sign in, it shows as being a remote check-in, but it doesn't mean they're checking in remotely. It means that they're just going to a different location from where they originally opened up their membership.
That could be, yeah, essentially, depending if, the person moved from a different location where they originally signed up. For example, if someone was from, Wyoming and they recently moved to Las Vegas and they didn't transfer their membership, it would still show up as a remote check-in.
Understood. But in reviewing this document, which you've testified is kept in the ordinary course of business, this signifies that the names that are on this paper checked in at the club on between September 1st, 2022 and September 3rd, 2022.
That is correct.
I move for admission of Defense Exhibit T2.
Any objection? No objection.
Do you have this document in front of you? If you could
Yes,
flip
I do.
through it with me. Page 1, we have a list of names, and it shows the check-in times of those that checked in and basically worked out at your location. Fair to say?
That is correct.
Page 2, same question.
That is also correct.
Page 3,
That is also correct.
page 4.
That is also correct.
Now, if you look at the bottom, and no need to say that person's name, it's not part of this case, but that person, it appears, was denied entry. You have to say yes.
Yes, that's correct.
So would we presume, and based upon your knowledge, this person tried to get in and work out, but they were not able to do so?
Yes.
And there's a couple others, same question, that were denied.
And that is also correct for them.
You could flip to page 9. It would be September 2nd, 2022, at 12:09 p.m.
Yes, I see it.
Who checked in?
Can I get the time again, sir?
Yes, 12:09 p.m.
That is going to be Robert R. Tellis.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Examination.
Mr. Jamieson, maybe you can help me out. What page did you just look on?
I was on page 9 of 30.
Thank you. I'm going to put defense exhibit. What number is it?
What is it,
The-
the Planet Fitness?
Uh-huh.
That's T2.
Oh, thank you. T2. Sir, can you see that on the, well, you have a copy, I know, but can you see it on the screen in front of you as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're reading this record as, see my finger here, it says 9/2 at 12:09 p.m. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then it has the name of Mr. Tellis and then the barcode associated with his membership. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, I think you said this on direct examination, but your location is Charleston and Rampart?
Charleston and the crossroad is Fort Apache.
Fort Apache, sorry. And there's a Whole Foods, Barnes & Noble in there, and
That is correct.
when people, I think you said, do a remote check-in, it means that their primary Planet Fitness is not the one they're going to at that particular day?
Correction, it's going to be not their home club where they originally signed up
Oh,
at.
were they, okay. But if they happen to work out there a lot, that would be okay as long as they're still a member of Planet Fitness?
Yes, if they're a Black Card member, they have access to any location.
Okay. And so when you come into Planet Fitness and this kind of record is produced, is it a card that you use to check in, or when it's the remote check-in, or any kind of check-in, I guess?
So for check-ins, we have multiple ways of checking in. One would be through our Planet Fitness app. The second would be a key tag. And if the barcode is a phone number, they would be able to just give a phone number to check in.
Okay. And so you mentioned an app. I would assume you mean an app on your phone?
Yes, the app, Planet Fitness application that you would find on Google Play Store or App Store.
Okay. So that's a way that you can remotely check in from your phone?
Yes, it would access a QR code that is basically your barcode for you to check in that pulls up your information.
And then that QR code, that's like one of those squares that we see, they would have to show that to you or one of the people you supervise as they come in the gym?
Yes, ma'am. They would scan in at the front desk.
Okay. And that's one way you can get in is if you have that app on your phone, that QR code will tell yourself or your employees that they're allowed to come in and work out.
Yes.
And then another way, I think you said, is if there's, they have an actual Planet Fitness card?
Yes. It was discontinued a while back, but we did have little key tags that you're able to attach to a keychain to check in.
And those two ways, do they show up the same way on this record?
Yes, but also there could be a discrepancy from the barcode. If you look at the document, specifically on page 9, you see that there is some that look like a phone number and some that are just a long series of digits.
Okay.
Most likely, we would assume that everybody has the app, but there could be a couple of members that do have a barcode still and never originally changed it.
Okay. And you actually got to my next question. I would assume in 2022, most people are doing this with their phone on the app because that's easier to do?
That is correct.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Just so we're clear, though, based upon your review of these documents, you're unable to say how Mr. Tellis checked in, but that he checked in?
Yes.
And you have to appear in person physically and scan it or be viewed, inspected, basically, before you go in?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Anyone cross?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
From the jurors.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just stand by.
Okay.
Question from a juror. It's been marked as court's exhibit number 19. Does your location have cameras that cover the check-in area? And if so, has that footage been requested by authorities?
We do have cameras at the front desk where you're able to see. To my knowledge, I know that we have, so much space that where we can go back in time to review footage. And since we're talking 2022, we do not have that footage.
Okay, thank you. Is there any follow-up, Mr. Draskevich?
Are you aware of a request that was made by the defense in this case to get that footage?
Yes.
And it was not available?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Ms. Whipple?
Sir, when was that request made?
I do not remember the day.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You're excused from your subpoena, and thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome.
All right, at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short recess, probably about a 5-minute recess. During this recess, you're admonished not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do any research, consult dictionaries, the internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form or express any opinion regarding the case till it's finally submitted to you. Thank you very much, and we're in recess.
Thank you. All rise for the receiver.
More raw courtroom coverage of the trial of Karen Reed is coming up from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast. Press subscribe so you don't miss a minute.